Hey everybody, Mark DeJesus here, looking forward to sharing with you here in today's broadcast. I'm going to be talking some more about some OCD battles and helping to encourage your journey in what God is doing to address areas of your life. And I'm going to get into another distortion. I've been talking about distortion, OCD distortions, and coming to a place of recognizing if you've got battles with OCD, there's some distortions that often come into play. And there's 7 of them. And what I want to do is I want to be able to get into number 5, which has to do with how you most likely carry a intense, hyper-inflated sense of responsibility within your own thoughts. And I'll get to that in just a second if the materials that we produce and are putting out a blessing to your life and to your journey. Please consider a one-time donation or becoming a regular supporter. That helps us because this is a full-time work, and I spend my days learning, growing in my own life, and supporting and coaching others, whether it be in videos, content, some one-on-ones, or just being able to give feedback. That's a blessing in the best way that I can. And I appreciate all that. We certainly have tons of great books and materials you can find at markdejesus.com. And it's my privilege and honor to give you equipping, give you support in the love and grace journey that God has you on. And when it comes to OCD, I just want to reiterate, it's a tough battle and it's a tough journey. And for many, they don't feel understood and they feel shamed in it. I know for me, there's been a long journey of discovery, of understanding, but I have learned there are some really important things that we have to understand if we're going through not only obsessive compulsive issues, but just any mental health battle at all. And my journey of experiencing greater healing and freedom in mental health has really been a call to the church and to the believers of God that, hey, we need to awaken to our mental health collectively. And some will say, well, that's different than someone who's diagnosed. And I think sometimes we create these dividing lines as though because I have anxiety, I have an anxiety disorder and the person next to me doesn't need to deal with anxiety. I think it separates it out. And it doesn't bring us, I want to take the understandings of mental, emotional health and bring it collectively to all of us because we all have areas in our life that are not rooted in the groundedness of the love of the Father, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the comfort of the Holy Spirit, and the truth that really sets us free. And OCD sufferers struggle with knowing how to process truth in the context of love. We pursue truth without having a connection to love. So therefore, truth that doesn't have a conduit of love wrapped around it leads us into all kinds of self-accusation, condemnation. We beat ourselves up. And so what I want to remind you, if you've been blessed by anything I've been talking about, is that my encouragement is going to be to get to the heart of what you battle, because your temptation, I'm going to tell you your biggest temptation. Your temptation in your OCD battle is to try to fix that thing. Whether you think you committed the unpardonable sin, you're not saved, or your cleanliness issue, when you even seek for help, you will seek to get your story out so we can fix this. Something you're going to tell me is going to fix this. And what the problem is, we're looking in the wrong place. Because what we need is we're going to need some things in our hearts to learn and grow in. I'm encouraging you to unplug from the panic. Help me, help me, help me. I need you to fix this thing right now. And I need you to buckle up and go, this is a long journey. And many will say, I can't take that. And I would say, someone has misrepresented to you what healing, what transformation looks like. It's a long haul. It's a journey. And if you'll do that, it'll open your attention to what you need to address. Because otherwise, you will come with panic, intensity, condemnation. And what we need is we need to step back a little bit. And I know it's hard. And I know it's a struggle. Because everything you guys write and share, I relate to. I relate to all of it. And I've had to really do some deep, to buckle up to do the deep work. Now, when I say work, I don't mean works, that if you do enough, then God will love you and help you. The Bible speaks against that kind of mentality. But what I'm talking about is rolling up your sleeves, heart work, facing the empty places, facing the areas of pain, facing the things that I never addressed, facing the reality that we weren't raised in the unconditional love of God, that many were not raised in grace. They were raised in a legalism, in a works, in a performance-based Christianity. That's the work. It's like, this anxiety is really because I haven't felt, it's not because I need to fix this thing about my theology. It's because I've not been rooted in love. And so therefore, that fear comes in and torments me, and that's what I need to work on. But I'm so tempted to work on this. That takes work. It takes work when the anxiety is raging that you go, I'm not serving this compulsion anymore. I'm not going to feed this incessive researching and asking and checking. And I feel like a drug addict coming off of this. But in the midst of it, God, I'm trying to figure out what it means to be loved. And I don't know love. And I need to learn to be loved. And I need to learn to let my heart be healed in love. But I'm struggling in my mind. And I'm battling and I'm wrestling. You see, that's the work I'm talking about. It's the work of facing discomfort. That's the work I'm talking about. It's not the work of your works being good enough, smart enough, spiritual enough, holy enough. All that stuff is just lies of deception. It's going to keep you bound. It's the work of going, all right, today I feel so uncomfortable, but I'm learning in the discomfort to learn what it means to be loved because I've never had that. And it wasn't until I realized it's not a brain issue as much as it is a love issue. Now, we could certainly go into chemical imbalances. Many people say, there's parts of our brain that just don't work correctly. And I hear you, I understand that. I'm not against that. But what I am a big believer in is the brain has a tremendous ability to be renewed. It takes time. It takes learning. It takes patience. It takes having bad days. It takes you're climbing up and then you feel like everything's just collapsing. And you get back in it again. And you step up and you say, okay, I got another layer. Because here's the thing. I felt tremendous breakthrough in stages. And sometimes I'd go for months without a breakthrough or weeks without a breakthrough or days without a breakthrough. So it would be different. I don't want to put an equation of expectation of how long it takes. But then I'd have a breakthrough and then another layer would come about. And I've learned to just go, God, this will take as long as it takes. This is a journey. And I'm learning to grow. I'm learning to be kind with myself. I'm learning to be patient. I'm learning to take in the learning and discovery of people who give me input. And I want to learn, what does that mean to be gracious? What does it mean to detox from these things that just keep spinning and learning what it means to be loved by you? And so many of us just go, I'm just so messed up. My brain's messed up. And and then we get into shame and stuff like that. And I want to release you from the shame of it. And yeah, maybe there's areas of your actual neural pathways that need healing. But the most powerful setting of healing any thought pathway is the love, grace, and nurture of God. There's nothing like it to calm those pathways that are firing and screaming. They don't need another lecture. You don't need 10 books to read unless those things help your heart. That's the new focus. Is learning to receiving what your heart needs. So I say that as just a passionate plea to those of you that are writing to me. I'm super concerned about the battles going on, but I'm mostly concerned that our eyes are stuck on the obsession and the compulsion. We're fixated on it. And so when we talk to people, we're fixated on it so we can't see anything else. And it was only until I said, okay, I got to step back. This thing's screaming at me. I've got to learn to look at my heart while this thing is screaming at me. It's a tough transition. But I pray that you can experience that, and I pray that you can make a decision, because most of what our healing involves is decision. I'm struggling. Well, what do you want? I want to be well. Well, if you want to be well, then give yourself the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, however many years you have left in life, to learn what it means to be loved, to be empowered by grace, to be nurtured and comforted, and to learn the truth that sets us free. Because most OCD sufferers in Christianity, they have a passion to know the truth, but they're actually, what it's manifesting is more bondage. But they think their driving force is truth, but they keep going into bondage. Now, what I want to help you, what I can't do, I'll tell you this, what I can't do is I can't convince you. I can't convince you. I can't say, you know what you need? I can't do that. And the moment I'm doing coaching work and I'm convincing someone, I let them know that. I can't do that for you. You have to come to your own conclusions. The people who recognize, hey, this stuff is leading me towards death. This stuff is leading, when I say death, I mean death and darkness. It's just, destruction. It's leading towards place of where I'm seeing this is dead works. This is dead stuff that I'm following after. I need a reboot of my faith. I see them making steps one day at a time. And that's encouraging. I believe that can be something that God will work in your life. And so let's get into this a little bit, my passionate introduction. And listen, if you disagree with those kind of things, that's fine too. Because again, I'm not here to try to convince anybody. But I'm talking about the 7 distortions, and I do have a mailing list, markdejesus.com/OCD help. I will update you on anything that is OCD related, and there'll be some emails get sent out to you asking you, share your feedback of your journey. That helps me as I read through them. I can't necessarily respond to everybody, but I do try to read everything, take it in as a part of, tuning my help that I provide for people and just the support in these videos of my own journey. So I've been talking about 7 distortions, that if you battle OCD, these are 7 things you have. Now, these things are not going to be healed in a snap of a finger. It's going to take a journey. But there's a common thread throughout all of them. They often involve love, grace, nurture, truth in the context of love. It's going to be learning how to see yourself in different ways. We've talked about perfectionism. If you haven't seen that, please go back to that, because you're going to have to recognize where you live perfectionistic against yourself. And a lot of that comes out of shame, self-hatred, comes out of you just not being loved, and you need perfectionism to try to feel safe. And so that's going to take an important recognition. There's a deep struggle with uncertainty, even though you need uncertainty. Faith works in the midst of uncertainty, but the battle doesn't let you. It doesn't let you have that uncertainty. To just learn to trust and grow, and it's okay. You don't have everything figured out. And then where this really gets intensified is number 3. I talked about the distorted meaning of thoughts, how you interpret your thoughts. That's where you actually need a lot of discipling. Is like learning to listen to some of the feedback you get from people that go, I don't think you need to be paying attention to that. And you go, yes, but I interpret it as this. And you need to be teachable in learning what it means to reinterpret. It's a growth journey. I realized my filter was off. Now, in many areas, my filter was great and just growing and flourishing. But in certain areas, whoa, it was like pulling that e-brake in the middle of driving. It was like trying to change the clutch when it wasn't kicking in, and just all these noises in the machine of my mind and heart. And so then what happens is there's a misinterpretation of the thought, and then there's a massive threat that comes along with it. So you have a thought, and the thought tells you it means you're not saved. It means you're not saved and you never were. So with that comes a massive threat. I am not saved. I'm not saved. Now, you go to help, you get feedback from people. Maybe you go to your pastor, you go to a counselor, therapist, and the feedback they give you, you're all right. They're not going, yeah, that's you're in danger, but inside you go, no, I'm in danger. So it develops an internal conspiracy that can't be shaken, because it's the emotion of it is intensified, and that threat, I must pay attention to it. I must. And so the number 5 There becomes an inflated responsibility. It's responsibility gone way off the charts. And it screams out something. I have to do something about this. It creates this deep, deep pressure. You must carry this on your shoulders to fix this. So we can see the stacking of these 7 things. And so not only do you struggle with the interpretation, the meaning, and the threat, you have this massive internal sense of responsibility. I got to do something about this. The troubling thought needs to be addressed, and I've got to solve it. And this forms compulsions. The obsession is, oh my goodness, this is unwanted. This is crazy. Oh wow, what this makes me feel like, what it makes me think of myself, what it makes me think I am, or what. That gets distorted. And now the compulsion becomes the way you go about it to try to feel safe. Try to fix these thoughts. Try to solve them, resolve them. Go. Now, in everyday life, when we have a troubling thought, we can go and we can talk to someone and share it. And many times we can get some great feedback. Hey, I'm struggling with this kind of thought or this kind of thing. And in the counsel of safety, we often get good feedback and it can help. So OCD is not always something you can just recognize right off the jump. It's what happens when you keep needing to go back. You keep needing that. You keep needing to receive. You keep needing reassurance. And then it gets you deeper and deeper. And sometimes the OCD spreads out. So if you have scrupulosity, it can spread out through a bunch of religious topics that just lead you back to, I'm not saved, or I'm not holy enough, or I've committed a sin that's unforgivable, or all these things that go into it. That same one can just get massively intensified. And part of it is when it comes to issues, you take them very seriously and you feel that pressure. I must do something about it. So these things all play into each other to get you into a place where you feel like you got to fix it. And what are you really fixing? You're trying to fix the guilt. You're trying to fix the anxiety. There's a sense of conflict you feel. Now, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, God's not giving you the spirit of fear. God is not manipulating you with anxiety to try to get you, because all anxiety does is lead you into further fear and torment. God also is not trying to use guilt on his believing children. I mean, he would say with OCD, well, I don't even know if I'm his child after all, right? And then the spin happens. I spent many, many years working on this guilt subject because most of Christianity uses guilt as a way that they think God is navigating their spiritual life and their relationships. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more here. But this subject of hyper-inflated responsibility is personal responsibility gone overboard. Now, responsibility is something I value, something I teach. Take personal responsibility for your life, for your journey. You know, no one can want healing more than you. No one can want growth more than you. Because when you are responsible, you make decisions for change. But for OCD sufferers, responsibility and taking responsibility for their thoughts, they start chasing stuff they do not even need to address. Your sense of duty is turned against you. Because you have strong morals. You have strong values. But I'm going to tell you something about your morals and your values. Morals and values must be rooted in the love of God. Morals and values must be rooted in his absolute undying compassion for you. And I've never met someone who struggles with OCD or even obsessive compulsive like tendencies, and maybe it's not something they've been diagnosed with, but you see some of the patterns, or even perfectionists, just perfectionists alone. I've never to this day met someone in those kind of battlegrounds that flourishes in the power of love, because that's their struggle. They can't see it. They think they need to fix the subject. I need to fix this disconnect with being connected to God. Like, wait, is this connection with God 100% based upon your effort and you getting it right? But see, the hyperinflated responsibility can't hear that. I go, no, I must carry this. I must carry this. And see the journey of learning that lays before us. That's why for many people who contact me for help, I go, listen to some of these resources. Let them, and this is the phrase I use, wash over your heart. Because we have to begin to slow down these pathways that you jump to and start looking at a deeper place. Because this hyper-inflated responsibility subject is a big one. Because this stuff becomes a burden on you. You're carrying burdens all day long. And Jesus even said, come to me, all you that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For the OCD sufferer, you are weary and heavy laden. Did you hear me on that? Jesus said, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, I will tell you what you need to do to fix this thing. No, he says, come to me. And this is a transition I'm inviting those who battle these obsessions and compulsions. We need to come to Christ in this form of allowing ourselves to enter into his rest. He says, come to me, I'm going to give you rest. Take my yoke. So I had to exchange the yoke of OCD world and do an exchange with him that I'm going to learn from you. And you say, how do I know I'm learning? He says, you'll find rest for your soul. Truth brings me into freedom, and it leads me into greater rest. A place within me where not everything is fixed and perfect. Right now in my current broadcast, I could look at an aspect of my thinking and my emotional world where I go, ooh, that part doesn't seem just right. Remember that perfectionism thing I talked about? That just right. I've got a bunch of those right now. But I've learned how to daily exercise. I'm going to say yes to your rest, that I am okay in your love, even though this thing is screaming, whatever it is, because once I solved that one, another one showed up, and another one showed up, and whack-a-mole happened until I learned I don't have to play whack-a-mole. I can unplug the machine, and I'm in the business of unplugging the machine because I want to learn to be loved. But I didn't know how. And to this day, I'm learning and growing, and that's why that's my major premise in all my ministry work, is helping people to get rooted and established in the love of God and let truth happen in the power of love relationship. Jesus wanting us to make that exchange. Come to me. Come to me. Are you understanding this? Are you letting it hit your heart? I'm actually going to pull up that passage. Give me a second here. I wasn't planning on pulling this up, but I feel like we need to see these words and just let them, again, wash over your heart. Where are we at here? Let me pull this up. It's coming up right? Yeah. Matthew 11:25, Jesus answered, said, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth. Now, for anyone who listens to my content or watches my content, I'm always bringing you back to the emphasis of the Father, because that's how Jesus lived. Everything was that sonship, Father, and Jesus has given us the ability to live as sons and daughters. I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you've hidden these things from the wise and prudent and have revealed them to babes. Even so, Father, for so it seemed good in your sight. All things have been delivered to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father. I won't get into that because I could get on a bunch of tangents. Verse 28, come to me, all you labor and are heavy laden. Now, one of the biggest manifestations of OCD is you're laboring, you're heavy laden. It's basically like this labor to feel fatigue, to work hard, and you're wearied. You're exhausted. That's you. You say, where's mental health in the Bible? It's all over if you look for it. You want to see it. He says, you're labor and heavy laden, to load up, to overburdened, with ceremony. Interesting. Because when I'm in an OCD loop, I'm being overburdened with ceremony. Some old English description of basically feedback loops of my obsession and compulsion, spinning, to place a burden on, to load one with a burden. Do you notice that Jesus doesn't say, let's figure it out and solve it? He says, come here, I'm going to give you rest. I'm going to give you rest. By implication, see the word here, by implication, to refresh, to take ease, to cause or to permit one to cease from any movement or labor in order to recover and collect his strength. Now, as an OCD sufferer, what is part of your journey is starving the compulsion. To cause or to permit one to cease from any movement or labor. That's actually your prescription. That I don't need to do anything about what I'm hearing and seeing. Right? You go, oh my goodness, this is excruciating. Right. That's the work of entering into rest. The Hebrew writer said, let us be diligent to enter into that rest. He said, entering into rest is not just, I'm just going to sit on the couch and be in a nebulous blob of nothing. No, it's very active entering into that rest. It's I'm intentionally moving into that place. He says, come to me. I'm here. I'm here. Take my yoke. And so one of the decisions that I engaged talks about a coupling. I like to look at the words, what they mean. You know, it talks about in the scriptures. That's why I like using something that has like a Strong's Concordance or something. I can click on it. I let the word meanings move me deeper into understanding relational. This is relational. If you're looking for a rule, if you're looking for something that you're going to be good enough to, you won't get the scriptures. The scriptures are all relational. All him going, come on, come over to me. Learn from me, he says. Learn from him. Learn from him. So one of the problems is we're under pressure to figure it all out ourselves. And we got to learn from him. We got to see his example and take the pressure off. And you say, how do I know I'm learning from Jesus? Well, I'm glad you asked, brothers and sisters. I'm gentle. And notice many of your obsessive pathways are not gentle. They're not kind. They're not loving. And lowly in heart. Wow. That Jesus takes this word of low degree, coming down, not rising up, coming to a humble posture. Oh my goodness. That as I approach him, he's bending down and meeting me. And if you hear anything other than that, you're probably under a law-based deception. Look at the fruit. You're more confused, more double-minded. Come to him. What these people say, how do I know I'm hearing from him? How do I know I'm hearing from? Here's one of the clear things. So if you're wearied and worn out, come to me. Learn from me. You're going to see a lot because I'm gentle, which is opposite of what you're living. You're living under harshness, pressure, accusation, beating yourself up. He goes, I'm gentle. And I'm going to bend my knee and meet you where you're at. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for meeting me where I'm at. Thank you for meeting me in my struggle. Thank you for meeting me and I'm spinning out. And I don't even know how to get to a place of landing my thoughts. So thank you for meeting me. Thank you that you, even though I don't know if I'm getting it right or not, that you haven't cast me away from you. That you've stayed there, faithful. Even though at times I can't feel it or struggle with it, you're there. And your word says so. Even though my feelings will struggle and my feelings can lie to me, and I'm learning to even, I'll get to that, because number 7 is, in the distortions, is you struggle with even processing your emotions, let alone figuring out what you need to pay attention to. So some of the signs in this passage of Scripture that I'm listening to the living word, to what Jesus is breathing into my life, is I'm engaging gentleness, humility, and rest. He even says, my yoke is easy. My burden is light. Now, is he saying life is going to be easy? You won't have trouble? No, because we've seen other scriptures. But what he's saying is he's saying this to you, OCD sufferers. I am in the journey of taking the pressure off you. Take the pressure off of having to have all your thoughts be just right. Taking the pressure off of you and all these spinning things that you're spinning about. Because really what you need is you need healing to your heart. Your heart is broken. You're focused on your head being broken, your mind being broken. And what you need is you need healing to your broken heart. And so there's some things I want to exhort you in this process, and I allow myself to go on tangents in these, and many of these are more long-form talks. Many people say, can you do some like short bite-sized pieces? Yes, those are great. I'm fans of them. I'll probably do more of them, but I got to be honest, you need more long-form things. You need to marinate on the truth that sets you free. A 5-minute clip isn't going to bring out what you need, and that's relational. Relational. Not against the 5-minute clips. I'm just saying where I feel in these discussions, we need that time to marinate and process. Some of you are listening to this while you're at work. Some of you are listening to this while you're on the treadmill or going for a walk, or you're sitting down and just letting it wash over you. That's what's needed in this process. So here's some things I want to give you for your consideration. These are some things that, oh man, this responsibility thing is ramped up. I'm just going to speak to your heart. These are factors that influence us. This is for your healing awareness. I've seen this over and over again. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in people I've helped. I've seen it over and over again. So I'm going to speak to you like we're sitting across from each other at the table, and I'm just sharing some things from my heart. Your upbringing, this is where much of this starts. It starts in your upbringing. Your upbringing may have inflamed an unhealthy sense of responsibility. And I'm going to talk about this in 2 ways. So you can write this down if you're a note taker. Your upbringing. I'm talking about 2 things. Number 1 is your home brokenness. Brokenness in your home is, we all have aspects of brokenness in our home. Why? Because we're all broken people trying to navigate life. So no matter how great or whatever your parents were, there are broken factors, things that they're not perfect. No one's perfect. Even though your OCD tries to pressurize you into being perfect. So there are some categories of home brokenness. Some of it is you were raised performance-based. That was the emphasis. Get good grades, all these things. You only get attention when you get those good grades. Many people grew up where they had family conflict. And in the family conflict, you took on the responsibility to be a bigger person, to be better, act better, make sure you got your stuff together. Maybe you took on the role of being the family consult. I work with many people that I have to release them of being the family consult, meaning the one that you rise up and you help people and you fix situations and you navigate. It puts a subconscious burden on you that when there's problems, you got to step up and fix it. So therefore, when you see things in your mind or see things in the world around you, you can't just watch it like a movie. You're in every movie and you have to do something about it to solve it. So there's the home upbringing that influences us. Secondly, is your church, religious, spiritual upbringing, how you were raised in the faith. And most likely, there is a lot of history of legalism, performance-based Christianity, rules and all these burdens without relationship. Because the gospel is founded upon the work Christ did for us. Our life is a response to that in his great love. Without that, every subject in the scriptures will go off the rails because the Bible is given to us in covenant, and covenant is relationship. You cannot have an experience of covenant without relationship. And many have been learned, get heady, get theology. I get concerned about believers like, I want to grow in God, so let me take all these courses and learn all this stuff. And we're like so heady and we can quote a lot of things. Our questions in our journey are not this heart stuff. It's figuring out all these things. So you can have arguments and you got your theology straight and you've got your perfect preachers that say things right and they align with you and this and that and all this stuff. And then really at the end of the day, we don't know how to deal with the stuff in our hearts because of how we were raised in the faith. So something you're going to have to be aware of and understand that These things need a rebooting. You'll need some healing regarding your upbringing. Nah, my family was great, right? Okay. That's fine. Maybe you have a make-believe picture of family and stuff. I'm not telling you your family was terrible, bad, and evil and rotten. That's not what I'm saying. Maybe it was. I'm just telling you brokenness is brokenness. And you're bringing up in the faith. Is it performance-based? Yeah, most likely. I want to tell you, too, that you're going to need to recognize you're hard on yourself. And you go to being hard on yourself so automatic, you may not even see it. So if you are hard on yourself in any way, shape, and form, it's going to be very easy for any weight of burden to be put back on you. I got to fix these thoughts. I got to do it. I got to do it now. I also want to share with you that you have some internal rules that harshly interpret your thoughts. Even when you look for help, people give you feedback or say, it's all right. It's all right. You're too hard on yourself, or you got some harsh rules. And you're like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I just want to serve God. But there's no room for love, nurture, learning, grace, process. You'll also need to recognize that you've got really intense black and white standards. They create a demand that you need to resolve the thought. You think because you have an unwanted thought or emotion, you feel personally responsible that you've got to do something to argue it, fix it, figure out some way. And this weight of responsibility inflames the compulsion. You're going to need to understand that your first response is not compassion. If you notice your pattern. Notice your pattern. Be aware of your pattern. In love and grace, not beating you up, but notice your pattern. Give me your craziest scenario. What comes to the surface? Is it compassion or is it fix? Right? Is this hitting home with you? Is this helping? Is this helping your heart? And I've had to learn to make that shift in my life. My first response to be compassionate. And so out of the lack of love, there's confusion between what is your responsibility to address and what is not. This is often the question. How do I know what to look at, what not? The problem is we're looking for a formula. And what you need is love. Love begins to balance out. And for OCD sufferers, you're probably going to have some of your pendulum swings where you feel like you're going too far. You're going to have to learn to let your mind and heart, and this is a learning journey, to let your mind be a gracious conduit for how thoughts pass through. Your gracious, loving conduit as it comes through of learning, oh my, that's a thought I don't like. It's okay. A thought doesn't mean something about me. It's not an indictment against me. It's not something that if I don't listen to it, I'm threatened. I don't have to do something about it. I can actually enter into God's rest. It's at times very painful process, but we're learning to be loved in the midst. And so I'm going to tell you up front, most of what you address doesn't need to be addressed. I say, how do I know if God's dealing with something? He doesn't do it in that way because he's relational. When we're relational, let's say I have a problem with you. Me and you got a problem. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to learn how to be loving, not first learn how to fix you. Then we're going to relate to each other. And we're going to learn how to relate to each other in good ways and better ways. Did you notice I haven't addressed the problem yet? And then be mindful and aware when the moment arises, there's an opportunity to address the issue in love. And when the issue gets addressed, it improves relationship. We feel more loved, we feel more connected. And that's how God deals with us as sons and daughters. None of our obsessive compulsive patterns is in what I just shared. So This personal responsibility is something that I had to deal with because I definitely was on the obsessive compulsive side. And there's still avenues that I have to iron out, work out, learn, because I'm in the work of compassion help. And every email that comes to me, every request for help, every person, I have to allow God to work, because not every email needs to be responded to. Not every comment needs to be addressed. Not every issue needs to be responded to. It's one thing to work through my obsessive compulsive issues. Now I'm in the work of actually helping people, and I have to go to deeper layers of not letting that personal responsibility get off track, because then I'm wanting it more than the other person wants it. And then I feel like it's on my shoulders to do something about it. And I over and over and over again am learning, because whenever I saw conflict, my automatic assumption was I need to do something about it. And I've had to learn, my first response needs to be, you know what? I need to be compassionate and let it be. Let it be, because that's a very hard thing for OCD people to do, is let it be. No, I got to think, okay, I let it be. And then an hour later, here it is again, and we're hit with it again. And I found the exercise for me is learning to let things be. In fact, every day of my life, I am practicing letting it be, entering into rest, letting go. And many people say, I can't do that, and I'm tired of people telling me to say, let it go. I get it. But I refuse to have that be the final sentence of my life. I refuse to believe that I can't learn to let go. And see, a lot of times when we talk about the description of OCD, and it's like, yes, people tell you need to do this, and it's hard to do that. But why does it have to end there? Why does it have to end with, that's just who I am for the rest of my life? Why do I have to come under that? I don't know how to let go, but I'll learn to, and I have learned to, and I've made a lot of progress. I'm still learning how to let go. I got some stuff this week I'm still learning how to let go, but I'm in my process and I'm in my journey, and I've given myself room in every area of my life where I feel so deficient in. Say, God, do you love me in this? And I'll learn. I don't care if if I could just read a scripture that I don't get at first, but I look at it again, or I got to read this or ask questions, and I want to discover what it means to let go, because even in that moment, it's 5 seconds. I feel that like, wow, and many of you have written to me, wow, when I did this, I felt like some peace, and I felt like I'm stepping into a new, right? And then the next day, it all came back, and you go, I'm defeated. No, that's not how this works. It's learning. So you took a step forward, took a step back. It's all right. It's okay. Somebody wrote in the comments, I just glanced at it. I literally just had the situation with an email I failed to reply to. Like, whatever that is that you're talking about, I've had thousands of that. Thousands of that. I get emails and emails and emails, and I forget to call someone, or I hear someone's going through something. I go, maybe it's something I did, because that was my go-to response. If I'm related to you and you're going through something that affects our relationship, it's something I did, and I took over responsibility. And I'm learning now to go, you know what? Let it be. And if there's something, this is a fight for life. Let it be. And if there's something I need to address, it will be made evident in truth that sets me free, not guilt that keeps me confused. When I was in pastoring, whenever someone was upset with me, 100% of the time, not 99, not 45%, 100% of the time, I felt a weight of pressure. I needed to do something about it. And whenever I would give into that, most of the time, it would make matters more inflamed. Because OCD leads us into striving. So we go, well, I need to pray and hear from God. It's hard to hear from God when you're following the screaming voice. So I had to go through the pain of, I don't have to fix this right now. I give this relational situation to you, God. And I trust you. And if this thing is all on me and it's all my fault, fine. Then I'll live with that and I'll see the negative effects of it. But then I notice over time, no, wow, I'm okay. I've seen more situations heal relationally when I give it over to God than when I live under compulsion. Because that compulsion can make us compulsive or impulsive, whichever word we want to use, right? Impulsive being we act quickly, emotionally, without maybe letting it marinate a bit. Compulsion is we're doing something to alleviate a conflict in us, a tension, a guilt, anxiety, right? Whichever it is, I've had both, so. But many times this personal responsibility, so how do we do it? We have to learn to practice letting go. I'm not telling you that as just let it go. I'm not talking about this as a one-step thing. And you've heard people say that, and it was hurtful because you're like, I don't know how to do it. I'm walking along as your brother and saying, yep, I'm always about the long game. Well, it'll take me months and years. It'll take as long as it takes. God in heaven is not standing there going, he knows your setup. He knows what you've been through. He knows these battlegrounds that you face. It's making sense. If not, it's all right. Someone wrote, over responsible for some, others totally under responsible. I think that I encourage, for me in my life, I don't know how to articulate it more than just every situation that creates that kind of thing. Some I can just live in the flow of it. Others, creates that tension. I find my first response, be compassionate, gracious. Don't carry a tension and pressure. I have to fix it. Sometimes even with emails, I will intentionally hit the snooze on it, snooze the email, so that as I'm working in my inbox, I am not constantly being confronted. Oh, I'm not sure how to deal with this, and it's always in my face. I snooze it as a way to go, I'm going to wait on this. And that's actually the hardest part, waiting on it. But if I can get my mind to rest from focusing on it in any way, shape, and form, be it 5 minutes, 5 days, when I come back to it, I do feel as I grow, I'm better able to look at it with a different lens. I'm just telling you my experience. Okay? We're like firemen always putting out fires. End result is tremendous stress and anxiety-driven life. Yes. And if this subject speaks to you in any way, shape, and form, you have to take the Superman cape off. You're called to lovingly serve. You're not called to be the fixer. And that can be incredibly difficult to embrace. But God's called us into rest. And with everything he's called us into, there is a grace available. In order, though, for me to find the grace of empowerment, I've got to do what the Hebrew writer says of entering into rest, because in the grace is rest. I've got to cease from my own works as God did. I've got to cease. I've got to cease this striving. That's the compulsion. You read Hebrews, was it Hebrews 4 about entering into his rest? That's one of the things. I've got to cease from this stuff. Cease from carrying, putting it on. I've got to, all this me. I feel like it becomes what the Bible talks about, dead works. It's just cycling exhaustion. So I want to encourage a release from that heavy pressure on your life. Because you're under this pressurized system of living. And Jesus is all about releasing you from pressure. The Father is releasing you from pressure. And every day, I have a moment where I get still. I have a number of moments where I do this. I get still and I release the pressure. the pressure of having to be a better husband, the pressure of having to be a better dad, the pressure of having to be a better author, coach, whatever, consult. I take that pressure off and I learn to be a child of God. Now, I'm going to tell you what was very, very helpful for me, but at times, wrestling, is I had to realize that guilt was a main motivator in my life. Driving OCD is some form of guilt-based thinking. And you need to know, guilt is a highly manipulative emotion, and it will drive you to act in a way to relieve it. And for OCD sufferers, what is basic guilt of like, I shouldn't have talked that way. That was out of line and harsh. I apologize. For an OCD sufferer, it's overboard. Every little thing you say, or every thought, or in these certain areas. And I went through a massive process of learning how to detox guilt in my life. In fact, when I really discovered this, I started to see like, wow, God doesn't use guilt with his children. And we could talk about guilt and break it down some. We'll do that. But as I started to get free, I realized most of our relationships are based on guilt. We do stuff based on this premise. I feel bad. And it's actually unbiblical. God does not teach in his word a premise we should do things out of feeling bad. We actually need to be moved with compassion. That's different. It's a different look. It's empowered. It's a flow. There's a freedom. There's a, I choose to love you. And I see you in a compassionate way. Guilt is, I did something wrong and I need to fix it. It's really not about bettering relationship. It's relieving an unwanted emotion. And as I began to work through it at deeper levels, I started teaching it. In fact, I have a series on my training site on freedom from the guilt trip, something like that. I forget the title of it. And you hear, it's in a service context of teaching, preaching, And there was a lot of illumination. People are like, my life is based on guilt. What I do with God, what I do with my relationships, my family, it's all based on I feel bad. And when you start going, okay, not serving that guilt, not serving that guilt, not serving that guilt, not serving that guilt, it starts to help you to realize, wow, God doesn't put a lot on my plate. Because when you take guilt and anxiety out of the equation, you actually see there's not much there. And this is a whole nother level of freedom, because as I got free from guilt, I felt guilty about being free from guilt. Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? Somebody help me out. Somebody help me. You're free from guilt and you feel guilty for being free from guilt. Or here's another one. I'd feel freedom from anxiety and then feel anxiety because I don't have any anxiety. And what's this all about, right? Because it's new territory. It's unfamiliar. We're so used to living in smog. When you go into breathing fresh air, it feels so unfamiliar. We have no references for this. It's like freedom feels like a trap. You will think freedom is too good to be true when you taste of it, even for a moment. It's too good to be true. That's how unloved we have tolerated in our lives. That's how much an unloving lifestyle we're used to. We're just not used to it. It's too good. No, there's got to be a catch. No, I need to be doing something, right? I began to walk my church through detoxing of the guilt, saying we're all just doing guilt stuff. I feel bad, so I learned in my parenting, I can't make parenting decisions out of I feel bad, because that thing will just keep ramping, and it's unproductive, and I can't be focused on what God is doing and the compassion that he's working in, because all I'm doing is alleviating anxiety and guilt. And when we're doing that, you're not parenting out of what your child needs. You're actually parenting out of what you need. Because if I interact with you relationally based on guilt, Our relationship is based on me feeling better, not you really being loved. Are you hearing this? Are you hearing this? Because that's a bomb right there. If you're watching the replay, rewind that and go back to what I just said 30 seconds ago. We follow guilt. It's not really about improving the relationship. We think it is. Relationship with God, relationship with others, relationship with ourselves. We think it is. I'm relieving this so I feel free. It becomes a self-absorbed focus to feel better, but we're not really. So then those of you that are guilt confessors, at first you feel like, oh, it's just clearing up the air between me and God. You don't realize you're unnecessarily dumping on someone. And now that there are times where they're going through, oh man, what's this? But you feel better, but you could be not making the relationship productive. All I'm saying, people say, well, what's guilt? What's not? You get on these formulas. Just allow love and grace to detox you for a minute. Just delay the guilt and anxiety. When I say that, delay doing what it says for a while. You'll be like a drug addict coming off of a drug. Don't worry, trust me. Shaking in my boots, going, this is what I feel to do, but I'm not going to do it. And here's something that's worked to my advantage. I know what it's like to have intense anxiety for hours, even days, even weeks, without doing what the anxiety is telling me to do. That has been a secret weapon to my journey because I know what detox is. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm familiar with my dad had a history of drug addiction, many stories he told me about in his work. And, I've worked with many people who've had addict issues. I see the parallels in this. I know what it's like to feel like I got to do something about this guilt feeling and not doing it. It is a tremendous pressure and it's very uncomfortable. And I've come to the point where I'm like, I've served this so much, I don't care anymore. I go, if I fall and collapse here, fine. I'm not doing this anymore. And I guess that helped me in my journey because it began to go, no, I will learn to be loved. I will learn. I don't need to carry this stuff like I am. Now, that personal responsibility will go overboard that this is something you need to think about. You believe you are responsible for preventing the unwanted thoughts. And sometimes the first stage is realizing you can't prevent thoughts from appearing to you. In fact, the harder you try, the worse it's going to get. You can't prevent the thoughts. That's an unfair expectation over you. It's mean, it's harsh, it's not loving, it's not gracious. Progress is not preventing thoughts from arriving. Progress occurs when you develop a loving response to your thoughts. Write this down. Progress is not preventing thoughts from arriving into your thinking. Progress is not. Progress in your journey is not preventing thoughts from arriving. Progress occurs when you develop a loving response to thoughts that arrive. Progress is found when you develop a loving response. And I have to encourage people, okay, they say, how do I do that? I want you to think about someone else you deeply love and you deeply care about. Anyone, your spouse, your child, your mother, your father, your friend, somebody you care about. If they were going through it and they shared it with you and you were connected to your love for them, what would you say to them? Would you say, what's the matter with you? Why are you having that thought? What's the matter with you? You're not even a Christian. You have these thoughts. That means you're not even a Christian. If you acted like that, your friend would say, please don't talk to me ever again. Right? But we allow this in our minds towards ourselves. And I want to encourage you, your journey that OCD is bringing up is a trajectory on learning to be loved. That's it. No, Mark, it's learning. Am I really saved? No, it's not it. You have a broken heart that doesn't know how to be loved. And the brokenness is so intensified inside of you that it threatens even the very sense of you being a Christian. Because if you don't know love, how can you connect from a heart sense connection to the power of that? Now, you made a decision to be saved, but you're so lost in the legalism and stuff that's thrown out, in your heart's in pain. So it translates your pain into, I've got to fix these areas because then I'll be safe. And smoke and mirrors. Progress occurs when you learn to develop a loving response to your thoughts. I'm not okay, and it's okay. My thoughts feel crazy. It's okay. In love, it helps you to see you don't need to feed them any more than they're already ramped up. I'm not going to add to this because I'm loved. But I will tell you the truth that whatever your compulsion is to fix, to research, read your Bible incessantly, pray, repent, do cleaning rituals, check the doors, check the knobs, call, confess, get reassurance, control, whatever you do, getting off of it's going to feel like coming off of an addiction. And even I want to urge those of you that are pursuing help, we pursue help like addicts. Fix me, fix me, fix me. It's 911. I need help right now. Now, it's great that you have urgency to work through these things, but you need urgency for the long haul, not urgency for the quick fix, because you'll get really frustrated. You'll get mad at your counselor. You'll feel like nothing works. You'll feel like whatever people are telling you isn't true, because there's an addict tendency that really wants to kick in. So the transition is learning to let go in the love of God. That's what we're learning. People say this is really, really hard. I understand. I hope this is creating some clarity. So someone wrote in the comment section, I've been listening to your advice, super helpful. Now I'm sort of confused as to what are my thoughts and what aren't. I've attached myself so much to these thoughts, I don't know what's what. So I think that what happens is it creates a dilemma. OCD creates a dilemma you don't need to answer. What are my thoughts and what are not my thoughts? To me, it can be a very disempowering dilemma. It can lead us into where we're beating ourselves up. I tend to look at what thought is this thought. It's more about what thoughts do I want to really embrace, And I want to learn to embrace faith, hope, and love. And at first, for me, I had to start clearing out like what thoughts I was listening to that were really not of God, more stuff that the devil feeds on and feeds in my life. And that's, fear. One of the two primary areas I see the enemy working a lot is fear, which is a whole umbrella, anxiety, worry. And two is accusation. It's in the form of shame, condemnation, religious performance, all that stuff. Those are kind of the two big veins I see him working down. So I like to look at what thoughts are of God. And I'm like, all right, what thoughts are of God? I want to grow. But when it comes to OCD mind, intrusive thoughts, you're saying, is this mine or not? And so I want to take a step back and don't even feed that question. It's an intrusive thought. Let it just pass on by. Because part of that, is this mine, is it not, is part of like magnifying and pulling it in. And we need to be more gracious and just go, that thought's kind of way out there. I need to let it pass on by. So that's just the question, what are my thoughts and what are not? Even if it's your thought, quote unquote, just for the sake of, even if it's your thought, it's like, and it's a bad thought, whatever that means, it didn't originate from you anyways. It originates from our enemy. That's why God said to Adam, who told you this? Who told you? Because God knows thoughts in our thinking, and especially thoughts that are not of God. They don't originate in our psychology. They have a history. I know people can argue that out of the heart, this and that, but it's more about where does the trail lead back to, So anyways, Mark, does the same definition of progress apply to habits versus thoughts? I feel like I have some trivial bad habits that I can't seem to break. Should I try a loving response versus willing change? Well, I don't think loving response and willing change are opposite of each other. First of all, I think a loving response will empower change because I see what's available. When I'm in love, I connect to love, I'm able to see more what's available. It empowers my ability to change. I'm trying to understand what you mean. A definition of progress apply to habits versus thoughts. I have some trivial bad habits I can't seem to break. So you have bad habits. This is where I would start. It's okay. It's okay. I'd connect to that. It's okay that I'm in a place where I have bad habits. I don't want them, but I'm loved right now, even though I have that. Christianity has skipped past that. I have this bad habit. How do I fix it? And it's fueled out of self-contempt. It's fueled out of being angry. It's like the person that looks in the mirror and is overweight and you go, you fat slob, go to the gym. That person will go to the gym for 2 weeks, maybe, and will quit. Because no change happens out of hate. Like fueled out of hate. It must be fueled. It is the goodness of God, his kindness that leads us to repentance. True change comes out of love. And you look in the mirror and go, you know what? I'm overweight right now and it's okay. Stuff happened. I've gone through some stuff. But you know what? You're loved. And in that love, there's more for you. And out of that, it breeds it. So I do my best to answer your questions, but sometimes I don't know you, or I don't know where, it would need more of a bigger conversation. So I'm doing my best to provide feedback. What you're doing is most needed ministry today. Thanks for saying that. Appreciate that. I sometimes really enjoy my journey, but my performance-driven parents put a lot of pressure on me, trying to fix me and make sure I do everything right. Can anybody relate to this? I think most people should relate to that. Be honest. It's not bashing our parents. It's just realizing each generation has mindsets that they cultivate. Learning to separate my thoughts from Satan's thoughts, helpful. Take every thought captive. My thoughts from Satan's thoughts. I get what you're saying. I just don't know. I see it more empowering to go, is this a God thought or an enemy thought? Because I think people get confused as like the enemy or me. Paul said, when I sin, it's not even me doing it. So that gives us a real clear image. This was just me. Again, this is not replacing your counseling or any psychiatric therapy help, blah, 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 disclaimer. I'm just telling you what's helpful for me is I found is this of God or is this of the devil? That's kind of how I started. And when I started, this is like 15 plus years ago. I was like, okay, I got a lot of thoughts that I think are God, but they're not. this enemy. And I started with that premise. So I started with 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but power, love, and sound mind. So I take each thought and I go, is this power, love, and sound mind? Power meaning like I'm empowered, I'm bold, Love, is it enhancing love in my life? And is it enhancing a sound mind, which can also mean self-control? Is it soundness? And I found like 80 to 90% of the thoughts I was listening to were not of that. They were of fear. And they were of accusation. So I was like, that thought's of the enemy. Whether, it's a thought that I've believed most of my life, whether it's been in my generations, because I talk about that in old teachings about where do like these thoughts from the enemy come from? Well, some of them came about through your lifetime. Thought came, it sounded like your own, you just weren't discerning, you follow along with it, and it's been a way of life, and it needs some time to untangle. Some of the thoughts you have from the enemy have been in your generations for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's why we often repeat familial patterns, right? Some of it has come about through trauma, because in a trauma or traumatic moment or traumatic transition or season of your life, your thinking is vulnerable. That's what makes trauma trauma. You're vulnerable to go in a day-to-day life. You can kind of go, okay, that thought, I don't need to dwell on that. In trauma, you're much more vulnerable to get hit with stuff that takes you a while to unravel, right? So I'm just giving you 3 key areas. So I developed a sense of, okay, is this God or not of God? My first litmus test was 2 Timothy 1:7. Then I moved into where Paul talked about in Corinthians that no matter what's going on, he says, these 3 things remain: faith, hope, and love. The greatest is love. And I began to really dive into understanding what love is, what hope is, and what faith is. And I would take every thought, is this improving love? Is this improving hope? Is this improving faith? Then I went further and I said, I want the truth. I want truth, right? And then Jack Nicklaus was like, you can't handle the truth. And I'm like, I know, but I don't care, right? And I said, I want it even if it is uncomfortable. But then I discovered the truth must be done in love. And so I began to learn about truth done in love relationship and accusation. Because the enemy is always seeking to get into the dialogue of our thinking with accusation. And so how do I know I'm being accused? I'm coming under shame. I'm coming under guilt. I'm coming under condemnation. I'm following patterns out of it, right? So how do we learn this? We have to relearn our God image of what we follow, because most of us have been taught a unhealthy God image, performance-based, legalism-based. God's mad at you. He's angry at you. Distant father, unavailable father, abandoned father who doesn't help you at all in your life and in your journey. So hope that helps. Yeah. So somebody wrote, I might have missed this, but you say let intrusive thoughts pass by. What does that look like? I'm asking because, again, it became a habit to grab onto that thought for me. Mark, can you post all OCD content on Spotify? So I've had enough requests, so I think I'm gonna take these talks and put them in podcast format. So if you like that, write to me, Mark@MarkDeJesus, and let me know that you'd like that. If I get enough people that will do that, that way you can listen to them in your podcast apps as well too. It just takes a few extra steps of work on our end. It's some extra time, but it can be done. So wait, hold on. Before I get off track. Okay, the intrusive thoughts. So I'll do specific videos. Here's my plan. In the OCD teaching, I'm going to do the 7 distortions. Then I'm going to do religious OCD scrupulosity. I'm going to focus in on that. Then I'm going to focus in on some of the little nuances, and one of them will be intrusive thoughts. We'll focus in on that. We'll exercise that. I teach this to my parents. I teach this as a parent to my kids. That's what I meant. I teach my parents. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I teach my kids on it. Here's the basic premise. The person who asked that and those you ask. Intrusive thoughts. Okay, the thought arrives, and usually what happens is it disturbs us because of the 7 distortions. and you can go back in my talk or anything, the 7 distortions cause me to narrow in on this, and then I feel like I need to do something about it. So I can, in fear, try to avoid it. Don't want to see it, don't want to see it, don't want to see it. We do that kind of thing. And understandable. Makes it worse. We do a bunch of other things. Maybe this is for me. Why is this there? We get introspective. Once we understand, okay, I got this disturbing, intrusive thought. We see it, we notice it, we let the thought fly on by, and here's the sentence I use in my coaching work. I notice it and I gently redirect myself to another place. Okay? Now, what it means is I notice the thought. It's a crazy sexual thought. Oh, there it is. There's that thought. I notice it. Makes me feel anxious, but I don't add to the anxiety. Okay? So maybe you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, you feel anxiety up to a 6. I'm not going to ramp it up to a 10 by going, oh my, this thought, maybe it means, nope. I feel a 6. I'm anxious. It's okay. Thought let on by, and I gently redirect myself. I'm loved and safe is often something I redirect myself to. I redirect myself to a person that's in front of me and talk. I don't need to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the person in front of me. Now, it often has to be repeated. Thought gets ramped up, gentle redirection. Thought gets ramped up, gentle redirection. Thought gets ramped up, gentle redirection. But like a plane flying in the sky, I notice the plane. Hey, kids, check out the plane floating in the sky. This is how I taught my kids. I notice a plane flying in the sky, right? There it is. And it's off in the distance, and now I redirect, and I'm looking at the sky and looking at other things. That takes practice, and it takes kindness, gentleness. And most of us are not very kind with ourselves. So anyways. So good of God or the enemy. Okay, I'm glad that's helpful because, I'm just trying to help create some practical clarity. But that helped for me, Obsessive thoughts tend to focus on the past, some things I have done. But condemnation doesn't come from God. Right. I've had that, and I still have that, where it's like a thought of the past, and I just feel like embarrassed, and it's just like a shame comes over me. It's like, you think of a memory. And when I say that, you might be thinking it's this big, huge kind of event. It could be, but a lot of times it's something nobody sees, but it's something I saw, right? I felt like I said something, and I felt embarrassed for saying it, or I asked a question, and I was like, oh, that was a dumb question. Why did I ask that? And I felt so embarrassed, and I shamed myself, or maybe somebody else shamed me, and then that embarrassed cycles through. And so I encourage you, my talks on shame I think could be very, very helpful, because I've had to learn to it's okay. Like I have that memory kick up, and it ramps up embarrassment, shame, guilt, And I'm like, I just let that thought kind of go up the roller coaster and back down again, and I gently redirect myself. Then the memory comes right back, and I'm like, gently redirect. Then the thought comes back, and I gently redirect. Do you see what I'm teaching you? What's the gentleness? It's actually the work of love. It's the loving heart of God, always gentle, always kind. And healing that intense fear-based harshness on yourself. So healing is not, I don't have those thoughts, because that's one of the mental health myths that we follow. Mark, if I could just get rid of these thoughts, I'd be better. But that's not how this works. It's having a more gentle response. So now I have a response system in me that when an intrusive thought arrives, I have a process by which I can walk through. And I can almost instinctively do it, because it wants to arrive. It often arrives at the weirdest of times. I think God allowed me to go through this, what you went through for this, really been a prisoner in my own mind, never talked about this, never felt freedom now until I'm watching your videos. That means a lot. And I really pray it does, because it's been a journey for me. And I think that God takes everything that we go through and uses the good, the bad, and the ugly. He takes everything I've been through. And that's why he's awesome, because it's his way of turning the tables on the enemy. That statement where, this was, I think it was in context of Joseph, that this was meant for evil and harm, but God's, taking this, I think there's this, I don't believe God's the author of it. He's not the author of confusion. God's not going, I'm going to make you, suffer so you can learn something. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But God goes, I have such faith in the work of my son that in the crud and the brokenness of sin and pain and struggle, you're going to find some things you never knew before. And I'm going to walk with you through this. And I'm not just going to snap it off of your life, because we ask for that, but we don't know. We don't really know what we're asking for. For God to take away all my OCD, he would have to force me how to think and make me a puppet, which would defy every element of how he's developed. I have a decision. I have a decision, to love him, to not love him. I have a decision to work on my life, not work on my life. So he's here. I have to learn how to tune into it. And it doesn't start with like the techniques. It starts with just learning who's God. Do I know him as a father? Do I when I see Jesus, do I see the image of the Father? Do I learn that? That's what we always need to be redirected back to. And so I began to learn, like discovering, which is a primary foundational resource that I encourage people in. So much so that the book currently right now, as of this broadcast, is a free download, Experiencing God's Love as Your Father. Because I worked very hard and was willing to just be able to put it out there. Now you can get it in, it says paperback, but that's actually not true. It's hardcover. It's available in hardcover. It's the only hardcover book I have currently. But you can get it on audiobook, ebook, and e-course as well too. Go a little further and give you some foundational things to begin to work on. And so, and then in that, many of you are like, man, this fear, anxiety. I find that I will not fear helps to get a clarification. What's of God? What's of the enemy? That's kind of my filter that I use, even to this day. Because I just want to keep learning God thoughts, keep tuning out enemy thoughts. And so those are some things, to kind of get you started. You can go further if you're like, okay, I'm performance driven in my life. The exposing the rejection mindset is something you're encouraged to do. The self-love area of learning to be kind and loving to yourself. The God loves me and I love myself is a great resource for that too. People ask me, which do I start with? It's kind of like what subject is bubbling up the most and seems the most helpful. Because, I don't have the formula, for what you need next. But I do know you need to be loved in everything. And the Heart Healing Journey is my latest book, and it's been a real joy to talk about the message on that and the subjects surrounding it, because we all need these areas, and to address the issues of the heart, we're going to need compassion. And so, anyways, I pray this is a blessing to your life and to your journey. It's so wonderful to be able to do these live broadcasts. I'll continue to do them as much as I can, amongst all the other things that are going on that I'm working on or helping in other people's lives. Just be blessed. I enjoy this, and I pray you do as well. Look forward to seeing you in future episodes and content.